Hello everyone and welcome to Demo-Strations, a new thing I'll be trying here on the channel, where I'll be screaming into the endless void of the internet about great indie game demos I've stumbled upon in hopes of bringing more attention to them. And the first game we'll be looking at is Conscript, a top-down isometric survival horror game that takes place in the trenches of World War I, brought to us by Catchweight Studio, a one-man team from the land down under.
Oh yeah, you know what time it is, it's time for demonstration! Yeah!
With visuals inspired by the PS1 32-bit era, in vein of Silent Hill 1, this may sound like an inherently niche game, but it won me over the second I stumbled upon it. I think it can win over a lot more people because I'm not sure about the greater population, but that heavily pixelated 3D style of graphics is something I'm hugely nostalgic for. And the games I associate that vibe and aesthetic with being the early Resi games, Silent Hill 1, and oddly enough Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, Conscript is able to blend in like it's a game of Where's Waldo. Continuing with that line of thought, let's talk about visuals. Conscript's visuals fit in with the games of the time while still having subtle moments of impressive visual detail that I don't remember being done on the PlayStation 1. Standout examples that come to mind are when the player passes over water in the trenches, and the lighting effects in the save rooms and enclosed spaces like the forts and tunnels. Mind you, when I spent most of my time with the PS1, I was a literal child playing Pro Skater and Disc 3 of Final Fantasy VII on repeat, and the latter of those examples playing is a very strong over-exaggeration. So if there is anything like this done on the PS1, please inform me in the comments section so you can get your internet brownie point for the day. The other standout visual moments are the pixelated art and FMV moments for the story and puzzles, which look great, where even my severely broken brain, which isn't capable of experiencing fear except for maybe once every third blue moon, can recognize this art has a very surreal and unsettling vibe to it. And I can't tell you if it's the natural uncanniness that comes with low pixelated images or the iconography of one of the worst shared experiences in human history. Either way, these visuals help the game have a unique voice in the horror landscape. And speaking of the horror of war, this game falls in the very rare setting of World War I games, giving Conscript a strong visual identity and standout setting to work with from the start. Conscript uses this setting in a very interesting way by instead of making it a shooter, which is the more obvious direction to head in, they smartly took the claustrophobic and winding nature of the trenches, turning it into a very memorable and believable map for a horror game. This also causes Conscript to feel very grounded and immersive, which is rare in horror games with all of the
"You were almost a Jill sandwich"
and the
"I'm the fucking universe."
Conscript achieves this due to the setting of the trenches leaning itself into the tropes of the genre. Of course the map is an intersecting hellhole, because that's how it really was. And of course the rooms require keys, because why would you want your enemy to have access to your supplies if you were forced to fall back, since due to the nature of trench warfare, your new goal is to immediately retake the trench that you just lost. The setting helps the player lower their center of disbelief, allowing for the genre tropes like puzzles and backtracking to feel more natural. I will also credit this to the effect of some smaller choices made, such as the enemies being a variety of differently equipped German soldiers, and the currency in the game being cigarettes. This helps create a strong original atmosphere for Conscript to stand on, especially since despite their charm and their genre-defining status, the games that inspired it, many of these games have failed to hold up over time in many areas Conscript succeeds in. While the visuals feel like they've come straight off of a PS1 demo disc, the gameplay is very much from the modern era. Inspired by Dark Souls and top-down shooters, the combat is purposely slow and clunky to add an element of helplessness, which you'll hear about in almost every Silent Hill retrospective. The slow Souls-esque combat replaces the job of tank controls had in those older survival horror games, since I imagine tank controls wouldn't have worked in the perspective and frankly would be annoying with all the turning and cramped spaces you travel through in the game. So while your normal movement is more fluid, we trade that when engaging in combat, creating more tense moments in the game. The game achieves this by having the player not be able to move while attacking with melee, and putting you in situations to use the dodge, deciding how much you will charge up your attack since you risk losing it if you're hit. giving the player a very basic and challenging moveset to use throughout the game, since unlike other soul-inspired games, you don't get stronger other than the better weapons that do break over time. Conscript is able to keep tension throughout it. The other half of combat is guns. The guns in Conscript operate like most survival horror games, but from a top-down perspective, meaning that you can't move while you shoot, and they have different ammo types, different spreads, and there's preferred situations to use each gun in. But unlike other games in the genre, they feel a lot more powerful and are much easier to aim due to the perspective change. The catch being, since guns are clearly more powerful, a majority of the guns in the game you must reload each shot individually and refill the clip while standing still. These downsides cause me to use guns more as a support weapon, taking out armored enemies and others with firearms first from long distance before engaging in melee combat, or dealing as much damage as possible in a short time to multiple enemies before I'm forced to deal with a melee fight. Another great thing about combat is if you know your way around the trenches, you're able to escape combat entirely and give yourself time to reload and line up shots or prepare for a fully charged melee attack once an enemy catches up to you, rewarding you for map memorization. All of this adds up to a fun enough combat system that's unique for the survival horror game genre, but pretty standard for the time considering how much Dark Souls inspires modern gaming. Other gameplay features are the puzzles, which are pretty standard for the survival horror game genre, and are stealth mechanics brought straight out of Amnesia, that I never personally use but I can imagine being useful. And using the map so you know where doorways are for paths that you haven't unlocked yet, and what you need to unlock them, as well as to see the safe rooms that are taken straight out of Resident Evil with ink, saves, and Conscript's own little version of the Merchant. Another standout feature of Conscript that stood out to me was the audio design. Everything was mixed well, where you can tell where enemies are based on breathing and footsteps, along with all of the player actions feeling natural and punchy. My one nitpick with this section of the game would be, for a game that's inspired by Silent Hill or the Resident Evil series, the soundtrack took the route of a more ambient type music that isn't exactly what I would prefer, because there's nothing impactful like the series that this is influenced by. And lastly, we'll cover the story, which is fairly simple based on what I've played, meaning there may be a lot more to it, but as far as I know, you play as a French soldier in a recently taken over trench by the German army. With most of your forces dead or retreated, and no way to contact the outside, your goal is to find an injured friend Pierre and escape with your lives. Overall, Conscript looks like it's going to be an amazing game, and I'm going to be keeping a close eye on it personally. For a free demo on its own, it's high quality, more than most early access titles with a price of entry, which is only more impressive with it being a project of a one-person team. Conscript is a perfect love letter to the era of survival horror from which it was inspired by. It throws out its own unique design and setting, and I hope the best for the future of the project and the team behind it. I recommend everyone try this demo out through the Steam link below. And if you enjoyed the game and wish to help the developer, there is a donation page on their official website, and there are several other links for Conscript in the description below. I'm TabaccoTanTony, and if you enjoyed this video and want others similar to it, please like, comment, and subscribe.